So after directing the top movie of the year domestically and number 4 in climbing internationally, James Gunn has become marquee talent, and he was just invited to speak at Variety's Entertainment and Technology Conference, which is pretty darn good considering that Variety is one of the oldest and most respected industry trades in the business. So of course, they asked him about Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and he said that potentially new members would be joining the team. Now, personally, I think that because this is a team film where the team just got together, I think the second film would be better served just fleshing out the members that we've already met, especially since Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't have the luxury of solo films like the Avengers enjoy. But this is going to be a positive video about how Guardians of the Galaxy is going to get even better, so let's talk about the top candidates to join the team in 2017. Now, the most obvious potential addition is Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr. has shown he has no problem muscling his way into other Marvel properties, and I think that it makes sense that he would show up in Guardians of the Galaxy considering they've used the character of Iron Man to sell the comic when it relaunched under Marvel now. And this is clearly a property, Guardians of the Galaxy, that's on Downey Jr.'s radar because he said he feels to date it's the best Marvel movie, and I'm sure he can already envision Tony Stark in space. I think he has a good humor, and besides just Robert Downey Jr. wanting to take credit for all the success that comes out of Marvel, no matter where it might be in their cinematic universe, I can see Robert Downey Jr. working with this group. I think that you'd have the the newbie mentality that works so well in Hollywood films, a member of the group, and that would serve to give some level of introduction because the character needs to be introduced. I think Rocket Raccoon and Tony Stark having a tete-a-tete would be a lot of fun to watch, and I think that there's a zaniness to both Tony Stark and Chris Pratt's Star-Lord, but they're operating, I think, on slightly different levels. Not in a good or a bad way, but just they have different vibes. And I think it would be interesting to see them play off of each other as well. And of course, in the comic at least, Tony Stark totally tries to hook up with Gamora, so we could see what would happen there as well. Although I would say that I would like to see Gamora going forward, establish her assassin background a little bit more strongly than she did in the first film, where it was really only by reputation only. I'd like to see her come into play and prove that she's earned the name as the deadliest woman in the galaxy. All right, so that's the first option, Robert Downey Jr. Makes sense, especially considering how popular his Iron Man is, and the fact that Marvel is aware of how popular and crucial his Iron Man is. Now, the second person who could join, and they could take on a couple of new members, but I have about 4.5 people here I think are the best candidates. The other one is Adam Warlock. Now, eagle-eyed superfans spotted what could be his cocoon among the collector's possessions in the first film, and so it makes sense that the character itself is on James Gunn's radar. Now, who is Adam Warlock? Adam Warlock is his name Adam is a little bit like Adam and Eve in that he is a first edition creation of a artificial human super race. And I think that in that regard he could get along really well with Rocket Raccoon, as they're both have been experimented on and the only one of their kind. So I think that could make for some interesting character development on both their parts. But Adam Warlock also would be an addition to add not just another actor to the mix, but another attractive actor, because Adam Warlock is another matinee idol type character. Although if I were Chris Pratt or Chris Pratt's agent, I'd be like, you have Chris Pratt, he worked very hard to get those abs, just focus on those. But we know Adam Warlock, there are a different couple of ways you could go with him, but basically he's a super-powered being, with energy rays and the like. And the other thing that would make sense for him tying into Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is that just like the rest of the team, he has a very strong history, not just with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but also Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. He's someone who has had quite a lot of interaction, in particular with the Soul Gem. So he fits totally into what the Guardians of the Galaxy are doing, and based on the current timeline that we've seen, with Marvel's Civil War coming to the cinematic universe, I think that Thanos is obviously probably something that's going to be saved for pretty far down the line. So he won't have come into play with the Earthbound storylines by the time Guardians of the Galaxy 2 hits theaters. So I think there's a very good chance that Guardians of the Galaxy 2 could continue to build on its successes, fleshing out the cosmic universe and foreshadowing this Thanos threat by really having a more even more focused Infinity Gauntlet storyline. They've only got this one gem that they interacted with in the first film, and I think that, we got a little history lesson on the gems, and I think very much the second Guardians of the Galaxy film could be something that focuses very much on the Infinity Gauntlet, and then is, barreling towards Avengers 3, let's say, with Thanos. And again, is very, very smartly makes it must-see viewing because it's so integral to the story that's being told company-wide. Although I think Guardians of the Galaxy at this point, considering the success of the first film, doesn't need to rely on that quite so much. But if it's a good formula that worked the first time around, why change it? So Adam Warlock, great choice for that decision. He ties into the continuity, he ties into the team, he can relate to Rocket Raccoon, and he's got another matinee idol guy to add to the mix. So that's Adam Warlock. So we've got Iron Man and Adam Warlock. Then who else? Angela. She has been quite a big part of the Guardians of the Galaxy on the page. She is a character who was created over in the Spawn universe, and then Marvel decided to, they upgraded a couple of characters from some of their other properties, and Angela was one of them. They brought her in, and they actually did quite a lot of changes with her. And I think that could make the changes they made, I think, could be quite tempting to Marvel Studios and James Gunn. And perhaps they're already tempting, and that's why the Marvel Comics got the marching orders to implement these in the comic to kind of get fans used to them already. So what are the changes? Well, anyway, she comes from a place called Heaven. I think it's spelled differently, and this is supposed to be the idea of where angels came from before they got into a big fight with Asgard and were banished. If you can check out the Original Sin Thor miniseries right now, I think it wrapped up. I believe it was pretty good, and basically in it, the big change was that it was revealed that Angela is Thor's long-lost sister, and also therefore Loki's adoptive sister. So that brings her into being an Asgardian god, or of the Asgardian race. And I also think it brings a much-needed female character into that universe. I think, of course, a lot of people, especially fans, have been rooting for Jamie Alexander Sif, but I think, let's be honest, the character just has never gelled or connected with audiences. When they needed to send someone over to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., who could they spare? Sif. I think they could use a stronger female presence there. And also I have to say it's not totally Sif's fault because they focus so much on Jane Foster, who obviously because she's I feel because she's played by Natalie Portman, they would want to give a lot of attention there. And I've enjoyed Natalie Portman's performance as Jane Foster. But I think, it's done a little bit too much, it's almost made Thor married right away. And I think that it's, robbed Sif of her time in the sun. And also, maybe Enchantress is someone else that people are hoping to see come into the Thor movies as well. They really have a lot of choices to bump up Thor 3 and make it a little bit more of an exciting, picture, considering the second one I think was a little bit of a dud, and Angela could be one of those elements, and introduce her over in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. It's just a way to tie these movies even closer together. So that's one change that I think would be effective across the board, and not just the Guardians of the Galaxy film, but also over in the Thor movies. I think that would be really helpful. And Angela's a cool character. She looks really cool. Now the other element is they've added quite the flirtation between Angela and Gamora, and it hasn't been established if it's two-sided, or if Gamora just likes having a fellow warrior friend and just humors it and they have a good time, or how serious Angela even is with the flirtation. But I have to say, knowing what we know of James Gunn, I think he'd be awfully tempted to explore that. Two hot warrior women who flirt and like to go on killing sprees together, that seems like something James Gunn has tailor-made for him. And so I wouldn't be surprised maybe if he even told Brian Michael Bendis to write that into the script. So don't be surprised if you see Angela popping up in there, and I think that she would be a good addition. I think she'd be well received, and I've enjoyed her in the comic. All right, so who is the other one? I said 4.5, so we've had 3. So who's our 4? Well, this ties into something that I think is a little known fact about not just, this other character from the Guardians of the Galaxy who was part of the lineup before we went into Marvel Now, but it actually ties into Carol Danvers, something that I wasn't aware of until I was doing research for this video. And that is Mar-Vell and his powers and his family. So one member of Guardians of the Galaxy who was quite popular for a while was Quasar, aka Phyla-vell. Now there's Mar-vell, obviously like Marvel the comic, but they gave it a space spelling, M-A-R--V-E-L, and Mar-vell has 2 artificial children, and one happens to be Phyla-vell. I say artificial, a lot of artificiality going on here, right? In the Guardians of the Galaxy, all their members are made in a lab, except for Chris Pratt's abs. He made those himself. I couldn't resist a good ab joke. So anyway, Phyla-vell is simulated or artificially created daughter of Mar-vell, and she was on the team with Guardians of the Galaxy for a while. So you could totally bring in that character and have her be a part of the mix, and I think it would be interesting because she too has her experience with this continuity, etc. But I have to say, I think even more interesting would be bringing Carol Danvers, because this points out that Mar-vell and that whole power set is part of Marvel Cosmic. And I think there's, as we've discussed, there's a very strong rumor that Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, will be showing up in at the end of Avengers 2 and possibly joining Captain America's team. So wouldn't it totally make sense, instead of giving her a solo movie, Marvel would find another way around giving a female character a solo movie, but this would make sense though, it'd be organic to have her say, you know what, I'm so happy I fought by your side, Cap, I had a great time, but now I want to go and explore the roots of my powers. I want to go into space with Guardians of the Galaxy and see what I can find out about Mar-vell, etc., and my people, I guess you could say, by power absorption. And I think that would totally make sense, and it would also tie with the fact that Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, is on the Guardians of the Galaxy team right now. Although I would say that it's a little bit of a missed opportunity on the part of the writers of the comic right now, and they have not tied in the fact about her powers in the cosmic universe and maybe wanting to do that as a reason for her wanting to go and join up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. They just used, hey, I want to get out of Earth's atmosphere a while. I just want to clear my head. The typical Hollywood road trip reasoning motivation that they always go with. And I think this is much more strong. It's more rooted in not just Carol Danvers' power set, but it's more rooted in why she would want to be on the team and why she'd be in the cosmic universe. So I think this would be great, and I think it's a really great way to get the character out there, and another way to add another woman to the team. Although I think that Gamora is not well established enough herself as a character to be adding new female members to the team. Or are they going to get character development before Gamora, who should really be first in line? All right, so those are my 4.5 candidates that I think James Gunn could be considering to join the Guardians of the Galaxy in their sequel. We've got Iron Man, Adam Warlock, Angela, Quasar, aka Phyla-vell, and maybe Carol Danvers. And I'm curious to what you think of those choices. Are any of them your top picks? Can you think of someone else? I mean, there are other more fringe members that could be added to the team, like Bug or Moondragon, but I feel these are the, I think the strongest choices that kind of still tie into what else the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been creating. But there could always be a total, something totally out of the box or out of left field that James Gunn could be planning. You never know. Or do you agree with me that they should keep the team as is and just work harder to explore the team, get to know them better, because without the solo movies, and also maybe bring in a better, stronger villain. Why doesn't Thanos step up to the plate, right? I think all the Marvel movies so far to date could really use stronger villains, and this would be a good time to start building one, especially because Thanos is supposed to be the villain to end all villains. Let's start working on establishing that. All right, so thank you so much for tuning into this episode about Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Share your thoughts down below, and you can check out some more episodes right now.